Hello, everybody. Sandy here. It's Fridays with Sandy. We've got a very interesting applicant, Saleem. Could you introduce yourself, Saleem?
Hi, my name's Saleem Haider. I am a senior at Cal State Fullerton. I'm studying accounting. I'm going to be applying
I think I missed that. Where do you go to school?
California State University Fullerton. It's a large public school in Southern California.
Thank you. Okay. And you're applying to deferred programs, 2+2 programs, etc.
Yes, 2+2 programs, hoping to matriculate fall of 2024. When I graduate, I'm going to be graduating this spring, and I'll be starting full-time with EY Parthenon in their Boston office.
Good. Could you outline your work experience so far, jobs you've had, and what you did there?
Absolutely. So my first year of undergraduate, I had a full-time position. It was for about 3-4 months working with the US Census. It was a clerical position. I started doing a little bit more IT work. Once I wrapped that up, I finished up my first year of undergraduate. That first summer, I did an internship with PwC, started in accounting. It was around a 4-week externship, the START program, wonderful experience. I used that to get a return offer, again with PwC.
Okay, good. Let's just stop the clock here for a minute. What was it like working for the census? That sounds interesting.
It was great.
And tell our eager beaver viewers how you got that job.
Yeah, so the census becomes the United States' largest employer every 10 years when they run it. I applied actually through the DMV. So I was adding my motorcycle classification to the DMV.
That's usually the Department of Motor Vehicles?
Correct. Yes, I was getting my motorcycle endorsement on my license, and I saw the flyer, and I figured, hey, this seems like a really cool job. They paid above minimum wage. It was a formal office position. I had no office experience as a first year in my undergraduate program, so I applied. And when I got it, it was a basic clerical position, answering phone calls.
Let me just clarify this, because
yes,
you're a very articulate guy. In some cases, too articulate. What do you mean when you say you applied through the DMV?
So typically, people will get referred for positions, or for government jobs in general. You apply through USA Jobs, which is the federal portal. And since the US Census is under the Federal Chamber of Commerce, that's how most people would apply for positions, usually with work experience or things like that. When I say I applied through the DMV, I meant to portray that I wasn't referred for the position. I didn't have any office connections or things like that. I applied as just a general applicant of the public, and that's how I found out about the job.
So the DMV had nothing to do with it, except you saw a flyer there.
Yeah, I just saw a flyer there, and I figured,
okay, this is important. Don't say you applied through the DMV. It's just confusing and odd.
Okay.
People really would hold that against you. Like this little back and forth we just had, employers watching this would go, this is a really smart guy who's going to give me a lot of trouble. And that I've always got to, twist like a wet washcloth to get the truth out. Okay, so I'm glad we're getting this out of the way.
Oh, of course, my sincere apologies. Didn't mean to confuse.
Good. Okay, you also have a lot of experience with TED. So could you explain, here's a question for you. This would be like a HBS interview question. Could you explain to your classmates what TED is and what you do there, and what your experience there has been?
Sure. So TED is a global nonprofit, the larger organization of TED. And what their main mission is to spread the wonderful ideas of established speakers in communities, professional networks, and universities. So this means esteemed faculty, CEOs, professionals.
Okay, let me interrupt here. I'm not getting it. I mean, I know a little bit what TED is, but if I didn't, I'd be totally lost. This is an important observation about you, and you're too much of a corporate guy. If the question is, explain to your classmates what TED is, you should say, TED is an organization that is known for running conferences with high-powered speakers. For instance, you may have heard of TED Talks. What TED Talks are blah, 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 blah. You see, I could do a better job if I knew more, but my attempt is to be conversational, and your attempt is to be corporate, okay, that would have a very subtle negative influence on a real interview, particularly if it were close. The interviewer would say, man, I don't want to sit next to this guy. I don't want to be around when this guy's called on because we're just going to get a bunch of boilerplate. So the suggestion is make your answers more conversational.
Sure.
Okay, with that in mind, hey there, could you explain what TED is and what your engagement with it has been to your Harvard classmates?
Yes. So TED is a nonprofit. They're known for hosting conferences using esteemed speakers that have lots of knowledge in certain areas. They're a global organization, so these conferences are held all over the place: Australia, United States, Europe. And what I'm involved with is I run one of an independent conferences in Southern California at my university. It was something that I started. We're a student-run organization. We have around 12 speakers every year, and lots to learn. All of our talks are published.
Okay, so you started a kind of TED node at your college. How did that? I'm impressed. What made you do that? How did that come? And what do you have to do it?
So I attended a high school in Southern California that had a TEDx youth program. So the youth programs are oriented.
You were born into TED, man.
I guess lucky, right place, right time, right? So
good.
Youth programs, they don't have professional speakers. They're oriented for just sub 18 audiences. So you typically perform at your high school. They only get high school students to perform at those conferences. It was a wonderful trial run to think about it that way. So as a high school student, I had the opportunity to learn public speaking.
Here.
Yes. So I had the opportunity to learn public speaking, and it was something I enjoyed. So when I attended university, I still had that in my mind. I was like, what can I start? What am I passionate about? What can I grow and scale?
Okay, once again, you're giving a great answer for a different forum here. One of my pieces of advice is answer the question immediately and then backpedal.
Okay. So
this is valuable. Yes. So hey, you've really been involved with TED. Could you tell me what that is and how that came about?
Absolutely. So I was involved with it in high school, and I started a branch of our own at Cal State Fullerton my first year of undergraduate. It was something I was passionate about. And I think it's a wonderful experience because as a student, I get to run an independent organization where I direct our conferences, I interview our speakers, and I manage all of our video editing. I manage a student board, and it's a great thing because I feel like we get to learn a lot and we get to communicate with lots of esteemed people in the community.
Yeah, when are we going to hear the name of any speaker that you ever brought to campus?
Sure. So this year we actually were able to
understand the question. It was meant as a friendly criticism.
Yes.
You should upfront that.
So perhaps list some of our big names or conferences or people that we've managed to
land.
Well,
I'm impressed by that. I assume everybody else will be, including your HPS interviewer.
Yeah. So one of the things that we were really proud of this year is we got a couple CEOs that ran larger consulting firms, boutique firms in Southern California that specialized in certain areas like marketing. We had Mitch Duckler, who runs a marketing consulting firm, and we had some faculty from Cornell doing presenting different research that they tailored and they've found out on their own about emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and they had lots of peer-reviewed research that they had done on students that are going through the pandemic when it relates to mental health, which is really fascinating.
Okay, so here's a kind of a curveball question. You've seen a lot of TED Talks, right?
Yes.
So if I came to you and said, I've been invited to give a TED Talk, what advice would you give?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a question that I get a lot. So when it comes into, I've been invited to do a TED Talk, what should I do? I think the biggest thing is that you have to keep the audience entertained because there's lots of them out there. TED is a large organization. They have a large following of around 30 million subscribers.
Okay,
I think 29
Number
million.
one, keep the audience entertained. What's number two?
Number two would probably be to do something that's unique. Because like I said, it's a very large channel with a lot of different speakers that have already presented on a number of topics, right? So you want to do something that hasn't been discussed before. You want to have an interesting angle. That's another thing, because you don't want to be bundled in with another speaker. It has to be something that really leaves an impact on the audience. So they leave the conference thinking, oh man, I remembered that one speaker that said something really interesting, and I'm going to be thinking about that. That, in my opinion, that's one of the most important things you should do.
That wasn't all that helpful. What you were doing was giving someone advice to how to be a powerful TED speaker among TED experts. The question is, I've never given a TED talk. Well, let's make it the question. I forget maybe if that was the exact way. I've never given a TED talk. Give me some advice.
Okay, so yeah, that's a slightly different question. So if you've never given a TED talk, I would say one of the biggest things that I always say when we audition speakers or when we're trying to communicate with them is, I have a quote, a saying, where you don't want to be just a jack of all trades, master of none. So it's most of the time, sometimes speakers think that they have an idea, they want to get a TED talk, they're interested, but their topic is too general, too all over the place, no specialization whatsoever, where you're really boiling it down and it's like, what is the main topic here?
You're giving me advice about how to be invited to give a TED talk.
I wouldn't say so. If the question was, what can I do to get a TED
I've
talk?
already been invited. Give me some advice, okay? You might say, here's a piece of advice. You know, most successful TED Talks are 20 minutes.
So
or whatever the answer is.
Once again, I still stand by the advice that it's to keep the idea specialized, to avoid being a jack of all trades.
I'm just giving you, and also other successful TED Talks are very specialized. So here are some examples.
So some examples would be Tom Thumb, who takes beatboxing and he focuses it in a very niche way of how it can impact your life. So using music to impact your life in a particular way, as opposed to just talking about music as a general boostness for wellness, it wouldn't be as good. It's good to have a very specialized focus, know a target audience.
Tell me the 3 best TED Talks you've ever attended and who gave them and why they were effective.
Oh man, that's a lot. It's hard to choose. I like Tom Thumb, the one I just mentioned. Very interesting talk. He relates beatboxing in a more philosophical sense of how you can become more creative with the way that you create music or the way that you.
That's number one. What's number 2?
Number 2 would probably be a talk that we featured this year. It was done by Mitch Duckler, and he's the CEO, marketing consulting firm, and he did a very interesting presentation about how you can differentiate your brand. I thought that was very interesting. And I would say number 3. Well, he said that there's 4 different ways you can differentiate yourself. There's the what, the how, the why, and the when. And it's very interesting because he put different examples about how companies have done it. And he starts it with a very personal anecdote about him and when he was doing his first interview and how he marketed himself for a position. And I felt that there was a lot to think about. It wasn't in the traditional sense of running through your work experience, what you can offer, but it's more so how to position yourself in the person's mind that is interviewing you. And I thought that was a very good way to look at it.
What's number 3? Who's
number 3? Number 3, let's see. I would, just to avoid having a more well-rounded top 3. There was another talk.
Good point. That's what I was thinking myself.
A good talk is, there was a talk by a veteran called Alexander Brown, who was a returning student at a university, and what he presented about was what that was like. And I felt like it had a very focused audience, which wasn't me in particular. It was more so for veterans that are returning into the general public that wanted to integrate themselves, but had lots of questions and doubts and tough experiences. And he tailored his talk towards that audience, and I thought it was very moving.
Good. Okay, I think they were looking for a woman as part of your top 3. Just, you know, this is just PC counterintelligence here.
Right.
For you and everybody else who's asked for examples. Good. Tell me about this Masked Heroes initiative.
Sure. So Masked Heroes initiative, it started as a GoFundMe from one of my peers was running it from high school. He goes to UC Berkeley. It was during the beginning of the pandemic, and he created a GoFundMe to raise money to purchase PPE, which is professional protective equipment for hospitals. Think face masks, gowns, face shields. And this was back when there was a massive shortage, and he had a connection to a supplier. So he would fundraise money, purchase it from a supplier, and then donate it to hospitals, homeless shelters, restaurants, places of need. The GoFundMe was widely successful, and I was brought on. He called upon me. I had a business background. I was, very knowledgeable when it comes just to starting small projects. And that's what it originally started as. It's like, hey, can we turn this into more of a club or an organization? And it just grew. It grew very quickly. We became incorporated state of California. We registered as a 501c3 nonprofit. And my role transformed from just helping establish it, give it some structure, to becoming more of a co-founder of this organization. And since then, we've raised around $120,000 across, that's been donated across California, as well as the larger United States. We've done some international projects in Vietnam and Mexico. And it's a wonderful experience. It's very, very fulfilling work because we do lots of donations, we do lots of tailored delivery, and it's a lot of fun.
Can you give me a roadmap of your career after business school?
After business school?
Yeah, a roadmap. But what job do you want after? Let's say you go to HBS. After HBS, what job do you want? And then what would be your next job, and where do you see yourself in 25, 30 years at the height of your career?
That's a lot of high level foresight, and the candid answer is I'm not sure, but I have some ideas. So what I would like to do post grad school is work at a Y Combinator startup. That's something that I learned about just recently, and I think it's fascinating. So working for a funded startup and helping scale that from the very beginning. When I think of my undergraduate career,
just for us liberal arts veterans here, what is a Y Combinator?
So Y Combinator it's an organization, and what they do, it's a council of venture capitalists, or so the way it works is that startups will apply to go through this program that the company Y Combinator does, and once they finish the program, which is meant to tailor their startup and help get it started and narrow down the idea, they get funded. And they get funded usually through a Series A funding, which is a type of loan that venture capitalists or people, in general, people with money that are looking.
If I didn't know what a Y Combinator was, I still don't know.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating because there's a lot of risk entailed with it, but you get to start out.
It's not fascinating that I don't understand what you're talking about. It's really damaging. You got the difference here, pal?
Yes.
Let me say this again. You're a very powerful, you've got some very powerful accomplishments. You enjoy talking, you enjoy explaining things, okay? What you apparently enjoy less is conversing with people and talking on a conversational level. That could do a lot of damage in in this application interview process. They may just what's the people who are followers of mine, they know the death word for interviews. I don't know if you can recall it, but let's not beat around the bush. The way you flunk an HBS interview is they said the guy sounded scripted, okay? In your case, that's a liability. That's a very unusual liability because you're so articulate that you can sound scripted about stuff that you're not even scripted about, okay? You're hyper articulate. You tend to think in a logical order. All that will serve you well in most of these situations in your life, except for this one, okay? So you have to make the answer shorter and more conversational, and you have to answer the question immediately. Don't start with the history of it. Answer the question immediately. It's advice that's hard to understand unless you're being subjected to it the way you are now. You got that?
Yes.
You think I'm right?
Yeah, I'd say that's valuable advice.
Good. Okay. 2 + 2 is tough. Okay. You got a 3.9. You come from not a feeder school. That could be good or bad. There's a positive aspect to that. They may say, hey, we've never had a guy from this school in our program. So that could be a plus. As we've discussed, GRE score. You said you're taking that again, right?
Yeah, I'm very open to taking it again, given that I have so much time. It's something
I would
probably do.
advise it. Your current GRE score is below the median, or it's just at the median.
Mhm.
Okay, which is a dangerous place to be, because the bottom half of the median are people. Now, you said that you're Hispanic.
Yes.
You have Hispanic affiliations, work with Hispanic communities. You know, what's your Hispanic resume?
It's a very interesting. Are you talking about more of a professional sense?
Any sense that you want to say where they're going to give you credit for being Hispanic?
Okay. I'm a part of my school's LBSA, Latino Business Student Association. My mom's from Mexico, so I speak fluent Spanish. I'm very proud of my cultural heritage. And I did the START internship, which was oriented towards Hispanic and Latinx populations.
Is that something I could have known from reading the material you sent me?
I don't think so, but in my application, I listed that I was bilingual, and there was a section about cultural identity where I detailed a little bit about that, like 150 words.
It's critical, man. You gotta upfront that as much as you can. Okay. Schools are always looking to fill those, just between me, you, and the hundreds of people listening. Schools are always trying to fill those quotas. Okay.
Yeah.
So make it easy for them. Man, if you can make the Hispanic case, you got the 3.9. If you could get the GRE scores where they're kind of 80% on both sides, you're a powerful applicant. You've got very strong work experience. You've got terrific extras. The TED stuff is something they admire. TED is, it's like what business schools, conceive of themselves as, prestigious, influential, accomplished, that they relate to that. And you've got a lot of extracurricular activities. So you're a powerful applicant.
Thank you.
And you drive a motorcycle. So there you go. Yeah, you see what you list on your resume here in the bottom corner is bilingual fluent in Spanish. What people would usually interpret that to mean is this guy took a lot of Spanish courses and spent a year in abroad in Mexico or Spain.
That's a good point, actually. I'm thinking, now that I think about it, could I change it to perhaps bilingual, Spanish native? Native in Spanish?
Right, Spanish native, but that's not going to help you as much as having the whole thing redolent of being Hispanic, including, what you're making the case in a footnote, okay? It's a very powerful part of your story.
That's a good point. How would you recommend I incorporate that given my current resume format?
What you have to do is maximize, which is business terminology for going right to the very line of lying without lying, okay? You've got to maximize your engagement in Hispanic events with Hispanic people, Hispanic interests, Hispanic organizations. Man, I might join one right now. Not kidding, friend. Okay, so I think you got your free interviews worth here.
Yeah, it seems like the biggest takeaway is being able to more simply detail my experiences and getting more to the point.
Be conversational. Don't have a stick up your butt. Optimize the Hispanic stuff. That's the point of the interview. Yeah, those are the takeaways.
That very valuable. Thank you so much.
Okay. Shalom and good luck. And I'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you.